Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We could remain standing, and we had some folks that have passed since our last meeting. Gloria Knight, nice lady. Martha Rooks, 103. She had it most to the end. And of course, Barbara Claiborne, Joyce Claiborne. And if we could remember our men and women in the armed forces. Thank you. At this time, Madam Clerk, we open up the public hearing on proposed changes to the village zoning law.
You'll need a motion to open?
Open?
You'll need a motion to
yeah.
open?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee DeSalvo, and later I'll ask for a motion to close. Those that would like to speak, if you could come up here to our music stand here, if you have notes or anything, you want to lay them there, that's what it's for.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
You do need a second?
Second.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, you do.
Oh, quick question before people start speaking. Did we hear from Orange County Planning
Yes,
Board
we
yet?
heard from Orange County
We did.
Planning, and we heard from the consolidated local planning.
It's in your packet.
I saw that SECRA was a negative declaration, which is good to hear. Yes.
Any comments?
All right.
My name is Jack Cameron. I'm a senior citizen, longtime resident of the Village Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, I'm sorry. I served the community for many years as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm a longtime member of the Association of Graduates at West Point. In June, I'll be a 60-year member of the AOG. I've also was asked to serve on the advisory committee for the comprehensive plan. In other words, I've got a lot of different perspectives and I wear a lot of different hats here. But I also want to tell you what I am not. I am not running for any office. I'm just here to speak the truth as I see it. I noticed that I submitted corrections in writing over a month ago, which have been incorporated, and that's just the change to from the word said R3, it should say R3 and R5, and I appreciate those corrections that were made. Also appreciate the effort that this board has made to building what it calls guardrails into the zoning board, especially with respect to apartments and that sort of thing. And those guardrails are appreciated, but they are detailed guardrails, and they sometimes there could be still problems because they are details. So I recommend that you have a big picture guardrail for the detail guardrails. And why do I say that? Well, the way this works is when somebody wants to build a property in a village, they come to the village with the building department, or the village or town, they go to the building department, and they present a plan. And the building inspector is presented with a stack of 4x8 drawings, architectural drawings, surveys, engineering designs, site plans. There's an awful lot of paper. And he's got to wade through all of that, and he's got to make sure every little detail in the guardrails and all the rest of the code, the building code, the fire code, that they're all covered. And it's, quite frankly, a lot of work, and it's possible for something to slip through, and I'll point that out in a later case. So I think you need big picture guardrails to guard these detailed guardrails, and that would be our old friend density. Now, density covers, in a sort of a hypothetical way, everything you need to put up something on a property. It's the size of the building, the common areas, the hallways, the stairs, the fire escapes, garbage storage, parking, driveways, snow storage, everything you need. It's just a big picture, but it is something that easily stands out and can protect these detailed guardrails. So the density has always been one dwelling unit per 2,500 square feet of land. About a year ago, this board, in response to efforts by the AOG, proposed, it wasn't unanimous, but they came to the consensus of 1,500 as the number that it should be. In this version of it, in the version they then published, and we conducted a public hearing and closed the public hearing for a recommendation to make it 1,250. That's exactly twice the number of apartments that are allowed in the current code. Then something happened, and the density went to 0 in this new resolution. I suggest that if 2 times the number of apartments at 1,250 is not enough, and the AOG has never requested more than a density lower than 850, why not split the difference? That would be 1,050. And if you're really, really hard over on 850, well, that would be just over 3 times the number of apartments allowed under the current code. What's wrong with 850? So I highly recommend that you come to some consensus and put density back into the code. It protects the rest of the code, and that's why so many communities in the county and the state across the country all have density in their zoning code. So now I want to talk about apartments, and more apartments. Which I think started out very innocently, but may have evolved into bait and switch marketing and even some threats. So let's go back to April of 2019. There was an appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a property located at the Penn Fed building. And Mr. Minicozy came in and introduced himself. He said he was the managing general partner of the Thayer Hotel, and he wanted to put up a condo hotel. You're probably all wondering what a condo hotel is. Well, we were too, for sure. He said that he had spent $3.615 million to buy the Penn Fed building, the Christiana, and all of the adjacent lots. He had all of them except one, which was about to close. $3.615 million. The owner, actually, if you look on Orange County Image Made, is HF Main Street Real Estate, Inc., 6008 Hood Hollow Road, Austin, Texas, 78731. He wanted to put, now condos are the same thing as apartments, they're just a different form of ownership. He wanted to put 63 units on that lot. That's 63 apartments. He said, in glowing terms, this would be a catalyst to revitalize the village, get all kinds of new investment here. It's going to be beautiful. He uses a lot of superlative adjectives. This project would have a lot of amenities. It would have a spa, a fitness center, a parking garage. This is interesting. You would have to access or exit the parking garage, you'd have to go one way up Perry, drive past the entrance to the first floor, continue up through a residential neighborhood, turn left on Church Street, go through a residential neighborhood, turn left again and come downhill on Drew, through a residential neighborhood, past the entrance exit on this side, and then out to the road. He also said, well, this is going to be a condo, so he had a number of variances that he needed. He requested, listen to this, a density of 462 square feet per dwelling unit, basically 2,500 in the code right now. That's 5.41 times more than the code would allow. He wanted 2 parking spaces instead of 1. He wanted a height of 70 feet when the code at the time was 35 feet all over the village. He wanted a rear yard setback from 24 feet to 11. He wanted lot area coverage from 80% to 91%. And he wanted apartment sizes for some units down to 725 square feet from the 900 that was in the code at the time. Also, off-street loading zones, he wanted it down from 2 spaces to 1. So all of these are very large asks, quite frankly. So then I got into a very interesting discussion. Well, what exactly are these condo units? Well, each one of them would be a two-family apartment condo with a full kitchen and washer and dryer. They're apartments. Who are you gonna market these things to? Well, the way I envisioned it, that the first floor, there would be a space on the left side that would be owned by, as a part of a condo, and they could put anything they wanted in there. It would be, whether it's a restaurant or something else. On the other side, it would be office space for the Thayer Labor Development seminars that are conducted. But all of the rest would be condo ownership, and he envisioned that West Point cadet families would want to buy these. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, college kids, they graduate from high school, they turn 18, they go away to college, and they're trying to break the ties with home. They don't want their parents hanging out with them every weekend, that's for sure. But anyway, so, and then these parents, after 4 years, when their cadets graduate, they can sell this to other West Point graduates. Again, good luck with that. But then he said, well, if they didn't need it, they could always rent it out as an Airbnb. And we pointed out to him that Airbnbs are not allowed in the village of Highland Falls. Oh, well, the Thayer will own some of these, and we'll use them as our overflow apartments for when we're overbooked at the hotel. And then we could create a pool, and they could register with that pool. And then, of course, our hotel rooms would get first priority, but we could rent them out for them. Well, where are they gonna check in? Well, haven't thought about that. Maybe, are you gonna have a desk in the building? You know, he hemmed and hawed on that, but I guess he said, maybe do that. What about security? Well, the Thayer has security on the midnight shift, but if that's it, and if there was a problem, well, then the Thayer security could come down and handle this issue. So, he's asking for the moon after spending $3.615 million for this, but then we had a very long, the next question up was, where's your secret determination? Well, I don't have one. Well, you know, we can't, the zoning board of appeals can't do anything until you have a secret determination. Didn't you go to the planning board? Oh, no, I skipped that, I came right here. Well, I said, we don't do secret, we're not equipped to do it, but if we have to, we'll hire consultants and engineers and we'll do that for you. But we'll have to charge you for that. And that's what the planning board is good at, so why don't you go to them, and you're gonna have to pay them for the same services, but at least they know what they're doing, that's their job. And then also, a use variance might be needed here. Condo hotel isn't in our zoning code. You could ask us for an interpretation. Is condo hotel the same thing as a hotel and then it would be permitted in the zone, or it's not allowed? Or you could go to the village board and ask them to, or you could ask us for a use variance instead of an interpretation. Or you could go to the village board and ask them if they would change the code, put condo hotel into the code. So we suggested they go to the building department, the planning board, the village board, do all of that. And then he discussed it with his planner and said he'd get back to us, and we never heard from him again on this project. Apparently he did go away, and he did go to the village board to pitch a project there, and in researching this, I saw that he did go before the planning board in the fall of 2019. But then in February of 2020, the village passed the previous resolution, which changed the zoning code. It gave Mr. Minicozy practically everything he needed to put up a hotel, not a condo hotel. You would think, again, that he would at least try to build within the code, the new code that they had just bent over backwards to give him. Well, I should go back. During this conversation also, he discussed his need for grants from the IDA, millions of dollars he wanted, and as well as pilot payments in lieu of taxes to pay for this condo hotel. So again, my takeaway on all this was you don't spend a lot of money to purchase anything without doing your due diligence, to check to see what the local code allows, what you can build there and stay within the code. You don't ask us, the locals, to genuflect to your vision, to bend it, to give away the village just because you want to do something. You do due diligence. So anyway, February 2020, resolution is passed. That allows everything needed for a hotel, including a 60-foot height plus a 15-foot bonus. It created the B3 district and created a number of other headaches which the board is trying to unwind with this resolution. And he could have built this hotel using the new code which had just been passed for him. But no, he had proposed a mix of what he called luxury suites and standard sized rooms. And he wanted 79 guest rooms, and he only had parking for, I believe, 60. So the village, again, bent over backwards to help the man and said, we will lease you parking spaces right out here at the senior center. Find some, and they actually drew up a lease, I believe, and asked him to sign it. They told him there's land behind McDonald's, maybe that vacant land, maybe he could get some leases there, do something about this. He never did. He never even consolidated the list of the lots on the Ken Bed lot. So anyway, he appealed to the ZBA in May of 2020, just shortly after the February 2020 resolution. Now, the ZBA courts tell us, among other things, we're supposed to discern legislative intent. Well, the legislative intent was what was passed 2 months before that, and it was obvious, though, that this board wanted, thought it was a great idea to have a hotel there. But he proposes instead of, like I said, 79 guest rooms, when he could only have 60, and he didn't have the parking, so he needed these leases. He also indicated on our ZBA application that, remember, he had wanted off-street loading to go from 2 to 1. With this application, he said he thought that the planning board would waive both off-street parking loading zones. Anyway, what he did ask for us was very minor. He wanted a 10-foot canopy when the code requires it to be 20 feet above the sidewalk. And that was for architectural reasons. And he wanted a 5-foot variance for the back of his property because the parking garage bumped out into the space, and the rest of the building going up from there actually met the code exactly. So Mr. Malikow here?
Yes, sir.
He objected vehemently and vigorously to this, to have to see, he lives right there behind it, to this proposal, because he'd be looking at a 70-plus height building. Mr. Minicozy then, at our meeting, said, offered to buy him out for cash. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. So anyway, he's got everything he needs except parking. But then he says, well, with COVID, I can't start building. And then he said, with COVID and inflation, the cost of the building has gone way, way up, and I can't start building. So unless I eliminate the luxury suites and put in all standard size rooms, and that would be, I think, taking up to something like 90 of rooms instead of the 79 that he had before. Again, he doesn't have parking for that either. Now, he did buy the Methodist Church down the street, 341 Main Street, and he bought that on March 31st of 2022 for $540,000. The hotel was, if I didn't say it, was Main Street. Did I mention that? The ownership of this property is HF Main Street Real Estate Inc., 6008 Hood Hollow Road, Austin, Texas, 78731. The Methodist Church is owned by MC Joint Ventures, 6008 Hood Hollow Road, again, Austin, Texas. And what he proposed to do there was take down the stone wall that's adjacent to the sidewalk in front of the church, excavate uphill towards the church and towards the foundations of the home on the left, put up another, more retaining walls, and then put a parking lot there, which would somehow be overflow parking for the hotel. That plan never went through, and so it went nowhere, and the Methodist Church, which he proposed to be a wine bar and restaurant, has just sat there. But oh, by the way, he applied for millions of dollars from the New York Forward Grant for all of this. So next time we heard from him was the Key Bank Building, 195 Main Street. He purchased this on September 1st, 2020 for $695,000, and this is owned by, and I get all of this from Orange County ImageMate, which is public records, easily accessible. Anybody can do it, I'll show you how. This is owned by ESR Development Incorporated, 6008 Hood Hollow Road, Austin, Texas. This is the Key Bank. Initially, he said it was going to be an AI research center, and the Orange County IDA bought into this and were paying him $20,000 a month. And that dried up, and it's a good thing it did, because AI has exploded on the scene in the last couple of years, where the really, really big money is into it. You know, Silicon Valley, Microsoft, Google. There was, as I was eating dinner tonight, there was a press conference in the Oval Office where they announced a $500 billion AI initiative that is coming to this country. So we would have been left with nothing down there if that had become an AI research center. But anyway, he came to us, same kind of thing, not staying within the code at all. He asked for the ZBA appeal to tear down Key Bank Building and put up 48 condos or apartments, 48. That was a request, and to do that, he requested a variance down to 600 square feet per dwelling unit. Now, 2,500 divided by 600 is 4.166, so that's at least that much more than the zoning code even allows. His documents showed that he had 28,863 square feet of property, so I divided that by 2,500, and came out he could, to stay within the code, he could have 11.542 apartments. 11. You can't round, have a 0.542. Just stay within the code, you can have 11 apartments. I divided 11 into 48 that he was asking, and that's 4.364 times more than the code allows. So he's asking for huge variances again, instead of trying to at least somehow indicate that he's going to stay within the code. So again, a legislative intent, we had the new code, that property's in B1, it hadn't changed, it was 2,500. And now the zoning board, we don't just make up the rules, we have a 5-point balancing test mandated by the state of New York. And none of those are determinative. We can balance things, but we have a great deal of discretion. And again, that's another reason why, going back to where I asked, we have density in the code. We have a lot of discretion in the zoning board. We can bend the guardrails, we can't break them, but we have discretion. Now, 2 of those 5 points are, is the variance large, and is it self-created? You can think about that. So, anyway, the courts have limited, actually, what we could do. There was a case where a zoning board of appeals granted a variance so large that the court said, you cannot do that. It threw it out because it said, you cannot make a variance so large that you're essentially rewriting the code. Only an elected board can do that, and an elected board, in this case, would be the village board. So there's a limit on to what we can do. So we told him, look, you have all of these, let me just make sure I got this. Yeah, you have this huge variance of down to 600 feet you're asking for, you have what we call a threshold issue in the law. Even if we wanted to give you this variance, the courts have said we can't give huge variances. So the first thing we would have to decide if we set a public hearing was whether we even have the authority to grant a variance down to 600 square feet. That's a threshold issue. The second threshold issue was something, as I said, things can slip through when the building department and the planning board are reading through all of these massive documents. Things can slip through. And I remember looking at the plans, the floor plans for this magnificently beautiful building that he wanted to put up, and something wasn't right, and then it hit me. Remember, the village had just passed a resolution saying, adding mixed-use development to the code, which said residential over commercial. The previous code said residential over commercial, but this time it said mixed-use development, residential over commercial. I looked at his floor plans and it hit me. He had 9 apartments over the commercial on the first floor, and he had 39 apartments over the garage, 2-story garage that he needed to cram 48 apartments onto this lot. So that was his second threshold issue. If we went to a public hearing, we would have to decide if this thing was even a mixed use development, and you might have to ask for a use variance or something else. But it points out that things can slip through the crack, and the only reason that this came before the zoning board was because of density. So I'm pleading with you, stick it back in the code, whatever number you want, but have it there. Well, anyway, Mr. Mincozy huddled with his planner, and he said he would get back to us. And we never heard from him again on this project. Instead, he listed it for sale. Now remember, he had bought it for $695,000, and he listed it for $1.2 million. Recently, I checked again last week, he still owns it, but the for sale sign that hung on a post is not there, but the post is still there. My guess is that he is just waiting to see what this board does and then come again to try to get something put up. I suspect that's the same thing that's going to happen with the Penn Fed lot. Rather than a hotel, we might see applications for a lot of apartments. Now, this is, if I didn't say it, the Key Bank is owned by ESR Development Incorporated, Wood Hollow Road, Austin, Texas. So I did a search on ImageMate again for other properties owned by ESR, and I found 3. There's a vacant lot on the south side of the Napa Auto Parts that wraps around a stone house. And he bought the vacant lot on April 25th of 2023 for $400,000. It's zoned R5, and it wraps around a stone house, single family. Also bought on the same date for $400,000, and that's zone B1. You own both of those. And the additional third lot, it's doesn't have an address. It's lot 105-6-2.11. He bought it on December 1st of 22 for $400,000. It's zone B1, and that lot runs from Walgreens south to Pine Terrace Road, and then just beyond that is the West Point Hotel, and that's zone B1. So he owns that. So then there was a public meeting conducted in the middle school late last year. A lot of us were there. Mr. Mincozy stood up on the podium and did his PowerPoint presentation, and he presented his vision for a beautiful and welcoming New Highland Falls that would run from the West Point Motel north. And it was apartment block after apartment block after apartment block. And I'm sitting, I reported this before, I was sitting in the audience and I'm listening to the reaction, and I'm hearing, you gotta be kidding me, and that's the polite version of that, to that looks worse than Newburgh. And what about our schools? What about our infrastructure? There was a lot of public mumbling, you know, this vision of apartment block after apartment block after apartment block was not what we wanted to maintain our village here in Highland Falls. So let's move on to the AOG, West Point Association of Graduates. I graduated in 1965. Membership is automatic when you graduate. There are no dues, but they raise a lot of money and they get a lot of requests for donations. But anyway, I was familiar with the AOG from when I was a kid. My father was a graduate of the class of 1938, and the AOG was a very small group, worked in the basement of Cullen Hall at West Point, and they put out a nice magazine 4 times a year. And there was no social media or anything like that in the 50s when I was a kid, so I'd read it. And it had nice information about West Point. It had class notes to update you on where everybody was and what they were doing. And something was fascinating, they had obituaries. Now, I was a bit of a history buff, and I was familiar with the big names from World War I, World War II, Korea, and I'd read all about them, but I never read about the guys who weren't known, but they contributed so much to the Army Air Force, or the Air Force, or to the country. So it was fascinating to read all of this stuff. Now, back in 1938, the Corps of Cadets, the strength, authorized strength was 1,200. At some point, probably during World War II, it went up to 2,400, and that's what it was when I was a cadet. And then at the end of the 60s, it went up to over 4,000. That means all of a sudden there's a whole lot more graduating every year, and there's a whole lot more living graduates. And that means and the other thing that happened was that military officers, when I grew up with it, pay for the military was really pretty lousy because there was a draft, even for the officers. But when the draft ended, then the pay went up, so you have a whole lot more graduates and a whole lot more money coming in, and a whole lot more guys being successful in life. And so AOG was able to start raising huge amounts of money. So they actually funded the new building up on West Reservoir, moved in there, have a much larger staff, and they do a lot of fundraising. In fact, also with a much larger Corps of Cadets, there's a whole lot more cadet activities and a lot more clubs and things that need support, and you can't have, you know, the Glee Club doing a bake sale to raise money and having slush funds. So the AOG was designated to raise all the money for the cadet activities. The clubs, the sports, like boxing, or rowing, or sailing, or skydiving, flying, rugby. I don't know if it's still a club sport or if it's an NCAA sport. And then there's all the cadet activities, like I said, like choirs, and maybe there's a chess club, and who knows what else. There's also semesters abroad junior year that aren't funded probably by the federal government. There's summer internships that they raise money for. And the way it works is the superintendent gives a list to the AOG every year and tells them, these are your priorities, this is what you're going to raise the money for. And it's all for stuff, things within the gates of West Point, mainly focusing on the cadets. So,
Mr. General,
yeah.
could I ask you to bring it to something here about the local zone?
Yeah, I'm getting there really quickly.
Okay.
So their mission is to,
Your history is right on, I know half of it,
okay,
right on.
the AOG also raises money now for the athletic department, which we used to know as the Army Athletic Association. So that's how they were able to raise $170 million for the Nike Stadium renovation. They have a lot of money, and they're able to raise it. Now, they say our mission is to serve in West Point in the long great line, and I told you about membership. So anyway, West Point, the AOG, for the first time several years ago, all of their focus was inside the gates. They then decided that they were going to expand outside the gate, and they created what they called the Hudson Valley Initiative, which was, and they had several goals here. They first, with a lot of publicity, they created the the Connect program at the middle school, and they said they were funding this, no strings attached, out of the goodness of their hearts, doing a wonderful thing for the community. Their second stated goal was to make the north end of Main Street much more beautiful, because their reason was that prospective cadets would come with their parents to visit before deciding whether to go to school here, and they compared our look to the Naval Academy in Annapolis. Annapolis is the state capital, for crying out loud. It's parts of it are very beautiful. My daughter lives there, and I can tell you the streets right outside the Naval Academy are extremely narrow and extremely hard to find a parking place. Sound familiar? But anyway, they compared us to Annapolis, they compared us to Coldspring, they compared us to Beacon, to Austin, apples and oranges comparison. But their properties on Main Street are owned by LGL in capital letters, LGL Foundation, care of Michael Hauser, 698 Mills Road, West Point, New York. And then they started buying properties, and I looked up just the three that are on Main Street. The first one is 427 Main Street, and Mr. Missouro and Mr. Baltimore bought that, and they proved that you don't have to tear a building down. They bought it in 2017 for $440,000. I'm sure they put a lot of money into it, and they sold it in June of 2023 for $1.2 million. Orange County shows that there's 2 apartments above it. But you don't have to tear a building down to save it. They then bought Shade's Restaurant in November of 23 for $800,000, and Orange County shows there are 4 apartments above it. And finally, they bought the park in February of 2024 for $500,000, and there's 3 apartments there. They then proposed to tear down this. They've gone through a number of iterations, but their first proposal was to tear down the park and Shades, put up a new building with a new restaurant on the first floor. That sounds great. But they wanted 20 apartments above it when there's only 7 because they're existing. Why do they want more apartments? Well, they say they want to beautify Main Street, and then they say also that their investors need to make a profit. Well, wait a minute, they're a non-profit, and the ownership is actually LGL Foundation, which is a non-profit. They can't make a profit, so they have to have investors, I guess, who are going to buy this after they do the legwork to get the permits. Okay, but who are these investors? Is it Foot Hollow Road in Texas, and is it others, or is it a combination of all? Who are these investors, and why do they need to make a profit? Well, they're not telling you something, and that's what I'm going to tell you tonight. Okay, this is what I'm going to tell you. Nope. West Point, historically, West Point, the Naval Academy, and the Air Force Academy are 4-year colleges, and they all have faculties. Okay, and historically, the Naval Academy has had a 50% mix of civilian and military faculty. West Point and the Air Force Academy have always had a vastly predominantly faculty of active duty military. So you get a captain or a major, he's done his company, up through the company works, maybe up to the battalion staff. They get a master's degree, they come here for 3 or 4 years, they do the classroom teaching, and then they move on. There's some permanent assistant professors at the lieutenant colonel level, probably with a PhD, and then each department has 2 colonels, full professors. Congress, for some reason, told the Air Force and West Point that they had to have a higher percentage of civilian staff. So West Point does have that. I don't know if they're 1-year contracts, extendable, or multi-year contracts. I don't know what it is. But then they came up with, I think, a pretty clever way to save some federal money. We have thousands of colleges all across the country. They all have tenured faculty, and if you're a tenured faculty at your college, you're entitled at some point in your career to a sabbatical, which would mean a 1-year 1 year with pay to do anything you want. You can do research, you could travel the world, you could play golf, you could do anything you want because you're getting paid. So West Point says to them, well, why don't you come here and teach? You'll get paid by your university or college, we'll pay you something, I don't know what. You can teach here and maybe you can do some research. But well, these people probably have a home back where they came from that they're gonna go back to, they're not gonna sell it, and maybe they're even living in college housing, I don't know. They may have a family there that doesn't wanna move because their kids are in school. So West Point identified the need for apartments for these civilian people here on a 1-year tour. So, but they don't have federal money to build apartments. Now, right across the street is the 5-star hotel on Lady Cliff property. And those hotel rooms, in fact, have 1 and 2 bedroom units with kitchenettes. But I looked it up, their nightly rate runs from $124 to $147 a night, which would be exorbitant to live in there a year, and it's probably their contract with the International Hotel Group wouldn't allow them to rent long-term to anybody anyway. But, so anyway, West Point and the AOG, which is the federal government, and the AOG, which is not the federal government, is asking you, us, to allow private money to put up apartments on our land to meet a federal requirement because they don't have the federal money to pay for it. And in the process, we got our zoning code. And what does that mean? Well, whatever the zoning is adopted applies to every single property in the business district. And that could be disastrous for us. We already see we have people who want to put up vast numbers of apartments. You're running a huge risk, and that is the elephant in the room. And that's, I've been speaking about this as well. This is Cajun. It's a different lifestyle west of us. In this wonderful country of ours, that's their right to live with high-density housing any way they want to. But with their very high birth rate, they constantly need more land and more water, and small villages can be a target. And we're a small, isolated village. So I want to tell you, in the beginning of December, I was in Home Depot in Central Valley, and I'm going to tell you a personal experience. Yes, I went to Rose's and Hopkins first, but they didn't have the valve I needed for my bathroom sink. So there I am in Central Valley. I next had an appointment in Goshen, and I had an hour to kill. It was a beautiful day because we were in the drought still, beautiful blue skies. So I said, rather than driving back east to turn north, to go through all those traffic lights up by Woodbury Common and drive on 17, why don't I just take the surface road and enjoy this beautiful day? Huge mistake. I took a right turn at an intersection. Now, I've been driving Route 17 east and west for many, many, many years, and there's all those tall apartments up on the right side, the north side. We've all seen them, what you can't see is what's on the other side of those apartments. Well, I took this wrong turn, and I drove straight into the heart of KJ, and the words fail me. Now, I'm saying that, I'm admitting it. I was so shocked about what I saw there and going up the hillside. And I ended up going in circles and finally saw a road sign that said New York Thruway. And I took that and it was on a county road paralleling 17, heading back east, the wrong direction. But what I saw was even more foundations and even more buildings going up. It's just incredible. So I challenge I'm looking at all the board members, I challenge each one of you who is willing to vote for this resolution in its present form to do what I did, drive into the heart of KJ, take a look all around, and then come back and look the voters in the eye and tell them I'm still voting, and having done that, I'm still voting for this resolution. And I'll take that one step further. I challenge anyone who is running for office this time around to do the same thing. Go into the heart of KJ, look all around, then come back and when you're out campaigning and talking to the voters, tell them whether you agree with this resolution if it hasn't passed, or you don't agree with it. If it has passed, tell them what you would change if you were elected to office. I think you owe it to the voters, all of you, all candidates, board members, anybody who's running, owe it to the voters. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank the public and voters who are listening, but I want to end with a quote from Ben Franklin. Mr. Franklin, who was on the Constitutional, he was a member of the Constitutional Convention, the board that actually wrote our wonderful and beautiful Constitution. It begins with the words, "We the people." It's for the first time in history, the people are saying the power comes from us, not some king or prince who claimed divine right, or a tribal leader or a warrior at the point of the sword. We the people are in charge, so on the org chart of our country, the people are on top, and then everything flows down from there to the federal government, to the state government, to the county government, to us here. But we the people are on top. So at the end of the Constitutional, on the last day of the Constitutional Convention, a lady asked him, Dr. Franklin, what do we have? Is it a monarchy or a republic? And his famous reply was, it's a republic if you can keep it. So I'm going to paraphrase Ben Franklin and say, we have a village if you can keep it. Thank you.
Yes.
Michael Joyce, proud member of the village of Highland Falls. And I would like to address this distinguished body and maybe just bring some common sense. I don't pretend to know anything about business, and I don't pretend to know anything about zoning. But what I do know is that if we don't do something to relieve the tax burden on the people that own residences here, what you are going to wind up with is houses that are owned by people that don't live in the village, renting the people on West Point because they get financial assistance, or, God bless them, and we all need help. We all need help in our lives sometime. Section 8. The people that were born and raised in this village will be priced out because the tax base was surrounded. Taxes are going to go up. School taxes have gone up every year. You guys increase the homeowner's tax by 5.6% recently. Water rates have gone up with another line. So it's not all or nothing. Moderation. But you have to alleviate the tax burden on these people. These people that were born and raised here, that went to school, that want to live here, but will be pushed out eventually because they'll retire, they'll have medical situations, their property taxes will keep on going up, school taxes will keep on going up, and they'll be forced to sell. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Patrick Flynn, Highland Falls. First, I want to thank Mr. Genero. A lot of information, but it needed to be said. We need more of that information when coming up with decisions. In the beginning of what he said, for those who didn't catch it, he's in favor of investors, but thanks to the planning board, the zoning board, other groups that we have, he's also the guardian of the village to make sure that it's done right. And that's the key. The reason I'm coming up is because he had mentioned the IDA, and I just want to caution the board and make sure that that's expressed in any investors that are coming in, because the IDA is not here to just give out money. The IDA is supposed to bring business to the community, not give money out after they're already here. The majority of these investors that we have right now are specifically investing in this town because it's right next to West Point, and great, that's awesome. But, like the project on 9W, which is no longer happening at this time, the $30 million hotel that was supposed to go up, the property was already purchased, it was already in progress. Then they went to the IDA for a 10-year tax break. That's not coming from the county, the state, or the federal. That is our property tax. That means they're not paying taxes for 10 years. Which, if we needed something, great, pull them in. Like Woodbury Common. You know, after so many years now, they're getting taxes, great. But they already bought the property. That's not what it's for. That's one of the reasons why the IDA got in trouble. Also, be careful. When I was mayor, I signed a letter saying I was in favor of the project, because I was. Who doesn't want a $30 million hotel going up on 9W? But it was flipped around and said I was in favor of the tax break, which was not on the letter. So please be careful, board, that you are specific on what's being signed, because though it said nothing about a tax break, that's the way the IDA took it. So now these projects are already asking the IDA, they've already bought the property. It's purchased. I would love to see them get every break they can, state, federal, whatever. But the main break they're looking for is to not pay us property tax. And that's one of the biggest things they're selling to us. We're gonna make your village great, and we're gonna boost up the economy. You're boosting up the economy, but zero pay on top of not paying taxes if they get an IDA, the IDA money. Now, we've asked several times, in several different meetings, about infrastructure. Infrastructure right out here is almost 100 years old. It is not going to support even close to the number of people they want to bring in. And we asked, hey, if we approve it, and we bring them in, will you help us with the infrastructure like the Holiday Inn did when they went in? They helped with the infrastructure. It was asked of them by the town and by the village because they wanted water and sewer. They paid. That, we're only asking for fair share. We're not looking for, give us the world. But I only bring that up because the idea was brought up, that's all I have. Please be careful, it's very dangerous.
Okay. Anyone else? To get up, let's go.
So I just got it. Again, I'm not back. All right, so I'm gonna move over here.
You're in charge.
I'm sorry I
You're
got
better off over here so the mic picks you up, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's true, it's the rules.
Okay.
It's the rules.
It's a rule.
I have to comment on a couple things that Jack said. 2,500 was never correct in this village, square feet per unit. It was never correct. 1,250 was never correct. It was an accident, it was a mistake. This decision has nothing to do with AOG. It has nothing to do with Mr. Manicosi. Let me just preface this by saying, I know that Jack has the best interest of this community in his heart, but he's way too conservative for us for 20, 30, 40 years in this condition. Jack, you're a great member of this community. I just think that we just need to step forward. We just need to make a big step forward. This development, this approval has nothing to do with AOG or Mr. Manicosi, and I wish we would consider them developer A, B, and C. Many people have gotten up here and said that they have spoken to people. Well, I spoke to architects, engineers, planners, and a real estate broker about square foot per unit and number of parking spaces. By far, has nothing to do with square foot per unit. The number of parking spaces always dictates the number of units that you can put into a place. We have a box, a 1 mile square box. In that box, we can only fit X amount of parking spaces and X amount of units. Has nothing to do with square footage, okay? It helps, I know Jack wants to put it in, really has nothing to do with it. Jack has identified a $50 million investment in our community. And I'm sorry to keep making reference to Jack. A developer came to our community and said, I'm gonna invest $50 million. For that, I need a parking adjustment, I need a loading adjustment, I need A, B, C, and D. So this board has $50 million investment in our community, a couple modifications. Jack identified, I'm sorry, Jack, they were identified as big asks. They are not big asks. They are not big asks. They are very little asks. $50 million is a big ask. A big ask for adjustment on parking, for a one instead of 2 loading zones. It's fine. Nobody has invested in our community in 50 years. Let them figure out what they're gonna do with 1 loading zone versus 2. We have spoken about people making money on buying, renovating, selling. God bless them. That's the American dream. Buy it, work it, fix it, sell it. Why is that a problem? Civilian teachers. That's great. I would love civilian teachers to come in here. We met people, sorry Jack, at church from Notre Dame, 2 doctorate degrees teaching at West Point. Great, that was great. So now you get a diverse opinion as opposed to a West Point opinion. No federal monies to build apartments. No federal monies to build apartments. That's why we need private money to build apartments. Pat, you had your chance. Sit down, Pat. I don't know what you're doing. You have nothing.
saying that the rules
I'm a
are
taxpayer too,
because of the
Pat. Sit
board.
down.
And the board is not telling you,
Stand face the board.
we've been
Okay.
yelled at for not addressing the board.
Okay, I don't want to
And now
sit.
you're allowed
I
to
don't
stand
want to
aside.
sit with my back to the taxpayers.
I didn't either.
Yeah, but we
The
did.
board told me that I had to
Stop,
address the board.
It's a public hearing, that's just.
It's abide by the rules. It's abide by the rules.
Sale, 1.2, big problem, not a problem. This community will never be KJ. This community cannot be KJ. I love people who laugh, who have no idea of what it means to be KJ. So this community can never be KJ. Michael hit the nail on the head. We need tax relief, tax relief, tax relief for people who live in this village. How do you get tax relief? You allow builders to build, and you collect taxes from those builders.
What if we're not getting the taxes?
Bankrupt.
Then who wins?
Thank you, sir.
Rob Reynolds, been a lifetime resident and moved several years ago to Cornwall. My family, my kids still live here with all 3 properties in town. Renovated one recently.
Speak up, Ralph, louder, please.
Can't hear you.
Speak up,
You
please.
can't hear me. So, I wrote a letter to the board about the density issue, and I agree. We're looking for tax base. I just paid tax on 3 properties, and it hurts. What really hurts is when I see the school tax twice as much as the town, county town, and the village tax. And I don't think people realize that all this hullabaloo about you put a commercial property in, and it's mixed use, or even if it's just commercial. A commercial property that goes from 7 apartments on top to 20 apartments on top, triples the number of potential students. And when you look at your school tax, especially with the state reducing the student aid, and they're gonna have to, the governor's budget is just coming out $10 billion more than it was, and it already went up $40 billion more than it was 3 years ago. Our taxes are going up statewide, even in spite of her commission to reduce the cost of living in New York. How do you reduce the cost of living in the village if you keep adding students to the school system that dwarfs the amount of tax you get from the commercial tax base? You put 2 stores down the bottom, that building is going to be appraised for tax purposes on just the square footage and the commercial use. Does it come close to covering the cost of the students that are going to be generated by 20 apartments, let alone 30 or 40? I really think you need to listen to Mr. Janarone and have some kind of density consideration in there, so at least the planning board has some teeth to make discretionary judgment, instead of being forced to look at the code and some developer come in and say, hey, this says I can do it. Please.
Anyone else?
Ron Malapat, 7 Parry. I also want to thank Mr. Generone for his history there, and also just comment that he gave Minicozy a variance of allowing him to go 10 foot from the residential districts. So I would add a 75-foot building 10 foot from my house. One suggestion that's come from this board, looking for solutions, was from Trustee Carroll. He said, I don't understand why the Pellwood Lake Association and the hotel owners didn't negotiate this out. And that made a lot of sense. Right now, you're gonna vote, and you're gonna vote to make that residential again. And we're gonna have 2 non-conforming businesses that can't improve, can't do nothing except the status quo, which the Pellwood Lake Association does not want. I think you need to consider that. We need solutions from this board, not scare tactics that we can't handle density or anything like that. We need solutions, and that's what we're looking for from here. But my question is, what's the plan for updating the residential districts? I mean, what's the timeline? What are our options? What are various plans? What about allowing the residents to give feedback on what you're proposing? If you don't change the residential zoning, West Point will buy up the village. Yes, they have housing allowances. And I have nothing against these people. They're moving in on my block every year. But they will eventually take over the village and force a different board to change the zoning. I think the board is failing the property tax people in the village, the residential owners, by not allowing accessory dwelling units. You don't have to change don't change the footprint, but you should be able to subdivide. I think that's I mentioned businesses and non-conforming. You know, the Botches and the Parrys, they're generations here, and I get they're I don't think there's any complaints about their businesses in the residential district. But there's a problem at the south end. And the village board has to come up with a solution. Thank you.
Anyone else? Wait, wait, Jack. Anyone else? Okay, Jack, you be the Sharon?
It's all right.
You can stand there if you want, Sharon.
That's all right.
So Pellwood Lake Association was brought up, and that's the problem in this village. I remember this man who owned the motel stood up and said, "We've been fighting racism for 30 years here." And I stood up afterwards and said, it had nothing to do with racism. It has everything to do with the conditions of the motel. They've had 30 years to upgrade these motels. I'm not talking about building more layers, more levels. Like this gentleman said, he doesn't want a 75-foot building next to his property. I'm right next to the motel. Norman's right next to the motel. Several other people are right next to the motel. Very few people in the neighborhood, maybe half, are not connected to the motel. So, yes, we need businesses, but we don't need, just think, if each apartment has 2 adults and maybe 3 kids, what that would do to our water bills, to our school taxes, have to hire more teachers. Just everything, the cost involved of having so many more apartments is just ridiculous because we are a small town. We are surrounded by the mountains and West Point owning that property. And I have to tell you that I've known for years that West Point has been given money, free, hand out. The government has been given West Pointers money to buy property in Island Falls. If you don't know that, I'm telling you right now, I've had several people who were officers at West Point have since retired, bought houses here to live in, and then once they retired, they left, sold it to whomever. So, I don't want to see any more congestion in here. You could have more, they could do the same thing with shades, and they could do the same thing with the park, and they could fix it up real nice. But again, the amount of money that it's gonna cost us in the long run, you're talking about 50 million now. That's not 50 million going into our pockets. It's not 50 million going to our taxes and our deficit. That's a bribe to get us, to bring more people in here. And like the other gentleman said, Highland Falls taxpayers are gonna be paying for it. We won't be able to pay the taxes anymore. We're gonna be forced out of our homes, people that grew up here and wanna stay here. And that's just how I feel about it. I hope we take that into consideration.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, Jack.
A couple of things. I've said it before, study after study after study throughout the country says that for every dollar that condos, apartments, and townhouses bring into a community, this is throughout the country. A good rule of thumb is that for every dollar of tax revenue they bring to the community, it's gonna cost the community $1.20 at least. I've heard of numbers as high as $1.60. So bringing a lot of more people in isn't going to lower your taxes, and inevitably, because there are so many more people requiring services, from schools to trash pickup, the town pays by the ton to haul the garbage out, for instance. The more people you have, the more your expenses there are going to be, and it's going to cost us $1.20 for every one that we raise in revenue. Changing the current residential, when the taxes go up, it's who does pay it, it's the people in the residential districts, that's true. But to change the zoning within the residential district is I can't even believe that's being proposed. I certainly wouldn't want to see an accessory dwelling unit on either side of me in the backyard, and I don't think anybody else who owns property yet wants to see even more people crowded into the residential districts. It's gonna cost us more, but it's not, it just destroys our neighborhoods. As far as West Pointers buying, I think 6 or 7 or 8 units, homes have sold in my neighborhood, Rondeau Park, over the last couple of years. Not one of them is active duty military, there's several retired military, but we're not being flooded with active duty military. And yes, they do get a variable housing allowance, which is quite considerable. It was $135 a month when I was younger, not several thousand like it is now. But again, they pay their taxes if they do buy, and if they do move after retirement, that's fine. But we're not gonna save our village by creating high-density housing. And another thing is, if you look at the history of our village, there's 1, 2, and 3-story buildings in the commercial districts and the business districts of Highland Falls. Some of them have apartments on top, some of them don't. Historically, they started out as the business was downstairs, and the owners lived upstairs, and maybe their extended family lived upstairs, and maybe the cooks or the staff lived upstairs. But the business model was the business is downstairs. Now all of this talk is flipping it. The business is all these apartments upstairs, and be damned what's on the first floor. It could stay empty and vacant. They don't really care. But the business model is the apartments, not the business. And that's something we've got to guard against. And finally, taking over by KJ, never going to happen. Here's how it works. You get a lot of apartments, a lot of people live there, and they all vote as a block. And Jim can tell you this, they're handed a card to KJ telling them how to vote, and that's what they do. And all they need is to get 3 seats on this board, and then they can completely rewrite the code, and that's how we could lose our village. So think about it. And I'm talking to the people behind me here too. You know, we've got to protect our village, and I know the taxes are high, but we can't make them worse. And if we want to keep a village, and that's what we all appreciate about Highland Falls. It is a village, not a town, not a city. It's a village. So, please.
All right, anyone else? Okay.
I just have a question. I know we're still on the hearing, but I just have a question on the agenda. You've got here, adopt negative declaration for the local law and then adopting the local law. What's the difference between those two?
Please.
Well, they're 2 different things. One is an environmental analysis of the local law, which is really just the local law. It's not project specific. So it's that has to be done before the local law is adopted. Seeker has to be closed. So that's why it's 2 separate actions by the board.
Okay, all right, so I just want to clarify that you have the public hearing on this zoning, and on the agenda, so here in maybe another half hour or so, you guys are going to vote this into law, these changes that you've already made. So it doesn't really matter what our opinion is, whether we agree or disagree with what's going on. Have the public hearing, have your say, and we're going to vote however we want anyway.
Alina, I agree exactly, because I was listening to everybody, especially when we allowed, you know, Mr. General, for example, to speak for 40 minutes. It doesn't sit well with me that we allow people to talk for over an hour when we already know what decision we have. I think that's very disrespectful of the people. It sounds like, you know, why we would have a public hearing, close it, and then we're gonna vote. We already know what the answer is. So we just allow you to talk on and on. And I'm not sure that's the right way to handle the public.
I would have to respectfully disagree, because everything that we heard should have weight on the decision that we're gonna make. Now,
Right,
your decision may already be made, but if you're listening to the public, you should make your decision
Jim,
in
wait,
your
we're saying the
vote,
same thing.
in your vote on
We're
what they
saying the
just
same
said.
thing.
So,
We're saying the same thing, so don't
So-
disagree with me. What Alina is saying is that the agenda tonight already says that we're gonna vote in the law.
vote it
And
in.
she's- that's
We're not gonna
correct.
vote it in.
Yeah.
If you listen to what the public had to say
That's what
this
I'm saying
evening,
to you.
somebody may vote no.
So you're
Hopefully
telling
enough
us
of
everybody
us
said
will.
no, so you're not gonna
Jim,
vote?
I'm agreeing with you,
Okay.
so you shouldn't disagree with me when you're.
You guys always vote the same.
Yeah,
But
but
they're
they
not.
said it's a block
Okay.
vote.
Yeah, it's a block vote. Is there any,
Interrupts him.
okay, I'll wait for all you to stop.
Tells him to-
Okay, talk.
Anyone else want to speak?
I've got more.
Oh, Jack, no.
So he can go for me, he can go for me.
What
You
can
know,
I
I
say?
think,
Please, please,
You, go ahead.
please,
No,
no, are we gonna,
please.
no, it's all right,
Okay.
it's all right. Because it's a block
If there's no,
vote.
there's, do you wanna speak? Okay.
I'm speaking.
Can I
for
just make a
Alina's
point of order?
Yeah, I'm trying to get there.
Okay, so just so everyone understands, the agenda is put together. It doesn't mean that the board has to do what's on the agenda. When it comes to seeker, when it comes to any of these things can be done tonight, or the board may decide to table them. So the board has a public hearing, it listens to the public, and based on what it hears from the public, it acts, or it doesn't act. So the board is not, in my opinion, and I represent many boards, and I've been through this many, many times, boards want to hear from the public, and just because something's on the agenda, the point is not to chill public discussion. Public hearing is for the public to be heard.
Lena, I think that's what, yeah, that's the point that Ms. Olivia is making. She's looking at the agenda, you know, we're allowing everybody to speak, and then it appears, at least on the agenda, that we already have a decision. So I agree with you, that doesn't make sense. I think we should table the vote. You know, it looks like, it says here that, you know, the SECRA is a negative declaration, that Orange County has already approved it. Yeah, so for us, the only thing that would keep us from voting on it is if the public doesn't want us to do it, but Michael, sorry, okay.
Why, I don't understand why there's no transparency as what, because you said things have changed, you heard from the county. Why wouldn't those topics be brought up before the public hearing, so they can ask questions based on that if you are potentially gonna vote on it?
I agree with you, I didn't even know that it was until now, but that's why
But if the
before
board-
anybody
if the
spoke,
board
I had
members-
asked.
if
I
all the
didn't
board-
even know. I just now was given the paper saying that the Orange County Planning Board approved it.
No, I'm
and that
asking you
SECRA
guys too.
approved it.
The one's looking
So
down.
they knew,
Yeah, I'm
I
asking
didn't.
you guys.
It's you, Jim.
Looking what?
Yeah, they knew, I didn't.
It's a public hearing, we'll answer when the public's finished.
But, well, why is there no transparency as to what has changed that you've heard from the county if you were going to vote on it?
Why would they tell
I'm
us? They
sorry.
didn't even
I'm
tell
sorry.
us.
They didn't even tell me.
What changed? I'm sorry.
When the meeting first started, you said you heard from the county and the other planning committee. So what has changed from last meeting to this meeting? So why would the mayor say you've heard from them? Look, he's lying.
It's me, I'm not understanding, I'm so
Mr.
sorry.
Leahy, your question is so
Tell
clear.
me.
It's
Tell me.
very clear. We have to
Okay,
keep
all right,
repeating.
is there anyone else,
You know,
Jim, I'm gonna let you go on your last one.
Understand it.
If you can talk over her, you got the floor. You're gonna have to be loud.
The county identified that the county planning board does not see any problem with the zoning modification.
Right.
They are not concerned that we are gonna develop 5,000 units.
We elected the board though,
That
not you.
identifies
Not you.
their, listen, if you understand, you won't be asking those questions.
They should be
okay?
telling us. They
Yeah,
should be
we
telling
don't.
us.
The county planning board said it's a negative declaration, okay? So they don't have a problem with what you do.
Can I have a motion to close the public hearing? A motion by Jim DeSalvo, is there a second?
What was the motion, Mr. Mayor?
Just to close the public hearing.
Who has? Let's go close the public hearing.
Well, okay.
Yeah, he would still like to speak, because he tried to, but you cut him off. It's a public hearing.
Is there a
He's
second? Is there a second?
How do you guys close the public hearing if the public's trying to speak?
You second it?
But they do.
This is great.
Okay, all right, can I speak?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Mrs. Guerrero said you spoke too long already.
I know.
So what do you want?
I'm sorry, you did
The
speak.
ground rule is saying that you can speak
But I
on a number of topics, and I spoke on a number of topics,
Okay.
and I listen. Seeker, the county planning board says, as far as this resolution is concerned, there's no countywide impact. It doesn't say that if a specific project comes before the board, that you don't have to do seeker for that. You definitely do. Any project that comes before the board has to be evaluated on its merits. So that's an important distinction.
That's correct.
I left some things out that I could have said, and I think I will say. There were, the AOG, of which I'm a member, got increasingly irritated, whatever you want, about the delays that have gone with this, and their tone changed significantly, and that disturbs me as a member. For instance, Connect was always done out of the goodness of their hearts. Most recently, they started saying, well, we're not gonna pay for Connect. Our investors, wherever they are gonna pay for Connect out of their profits that they're making in our village. Well, that to me is bait and switch. The promise, the bait was Connect, a wonderful thing they're doing out of the goodness of their hearts. And then they say, oh, we're not even gonna pay for it. We're gonna let our investors pay for it. I don't know how you enforce that. But they're gonna do it on our, from profits made on our land, on our back, and our taxes are gonna go up. And again, our taxes have to go up if we allow high-density housing in here. I've made a modest request, all I've asked for is that we put density back in the code at whatever number you guys settle on. You don't have to close the public hearing tonight, you can think it over, you can do what you want. But let's remember that this is our village, and we've got to do it right, otherwise we will lose it. Did I say it? I probably said it, that the number, I already said that a large number of homes have sold in my neighborhood and they were not active duty military. I said that, but anyway, just wanted to clarify things, thank you.
Heidi, have you received any written comments at all?
No, sir.
Okay,
None to this additional change.
right, okay. So I have a motion to close the public hearing, do I have a second? Right?
It died. That motion died. Nobody seconded it. It's over.
Okay, so the motion died, nobody seconded.
If you do not close the public hearing, you cannot move forward.
That's right. Good.
So if you do not close the public hearing, the question is, are you keeping the public hearing open until the next meeting?
Oh,
I mean, you
Yes.
can leave the public hearing open. If you do that, you cannot do anything else related to this local law. You can close seeker, but if you make modifications to the local law based on what you've heard from the public,
I think that Jimmy, I think we're gonna need more time than 2 weeks.
I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, that we don't close the public hearing, and at this point in time, because we will be on YouTube, and the audience out here can do the telephone tell a neighbor, to generate comments, written comments, or show up at our next meeting where we anticipate closing the public hearing, because we need to hear from you. That's just my opinion.
Wait a minute. We're not closing, we didn't, the meeting's, it's
We're
not gonna close.
Right, that, and I am,
But we're not going to be prepared, I don't think, unless you all four of you think you can be prepared in 2 weeks.
well, we may not, but I would like for the public to give us more comment. That's where I'm going. If it doesn't close at the next meeting, then so be it. But
Again,
at
it
least
doesn't
they'll have an
sit- yeah.
opportunity to speak again.
Right, it doesn't sit right with me that most of the people who are here tonight are against the law that we are prepared to pass tonight. Now, let me be clear, I fully support the law, but if the people don't want it, and the people who are showing up don't want it, then, you know, we can't be disrespectful of that. So I agree with you, Jim. If we keep the public hearing open and the people who watch this tonight say, well, we want more people at that meeting who actually agree about passing of the law, then we vote with what the people want to say. But tonight, they're against it.
All right, Pete,
The people here tonight are against it.
go ahead.
Is that agreement changed?
Okay, I'd like to, get 2 weeks to talk to the rest of the board, due to the fact that, I'd like to evaluate what Jack Janarone said about keeping the square footage open by giving it a low number. If we went with, 650 or Story Association of Records, what they talked about the 850, they would have agreed to. I talked to them and they talked about how 625 would be fantastic. If that keeps the square footage open, do you achieve what you were trying to achieve, Jack?
I'm saying you need density as a big picture guardrail for the detail guardrails. And I think 1250 is an entirely reasonable number. AOG was initially asking for 850. If that's what floats your boat, do that. That's 3 times the number of apartments that are now allowed in the code. I think 1250 2 times is more than adequate. But that's your decision, but you gotta balance it against what it's gonna do to our village and the very future of our existence of our village.
All right,
I talked with
so-
some engineers and they talked about Beacon and stuff like that, and they talked about 650.
Yeah, but that's the city.
Okay, let's make
So-
a decision
so Pete-
as a
so Pete-
board. Are we closing the public hearing
I'm
or
gonna do it
not?
right, I wanna see if this fits, if anything fits. So, at least I'm looking at you for guidance here. We're not closing the public hearing because there wasn't a second to close it.
Okay,
So wait a minute. I want everyone to be on the same page here. It's hard, it's very, very hard. So that means it
It means it's still open.
means
but I
it's
would-
still open, that's what I wanna say, okay.
But I would suggest that since it's de facto that it's still open, that you have a motion to adjourn it to the next meeting.
No, I don't know, okay, I don't mind doing it at the next meeting, but there's no way this board is gonna come up with a new document within 2 weeks and still have to have it published. Still have to have it published.
Well, if
You have a
okay,
weekly paper that you gotta be 2 weeks ahead of them.
If you adjourn the public
We're not gonna
hearing-
be ready at the next meeting with a new local
Well,
law.
okay, so I need to understand what you think you're gonna do, because if you adjourn.
I
If
think
you
what I'm
adjourn
saying is, keep the public hearing open because it didn't get a motion to close, you agree with that?
Right.
And we have 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 3 meetings, come up with a new local law. We heard it tonight. There's no one new that spoke tonight. There's not one new person that spoke tonight. I don't mean that as a negative. We've heard it now. So we either want to change the local law so it mirrors a little bit, a lot of what some of you were saying, or not. That's gonna take it's gonna take a couple meetings. And then you're gonna have to have it written, and then you're gonna have to have it published, and then we adjourn the public hearing.
My
Not
only,
adjourn, we open the public, we come back to a meeting and it's already open, so we continue.
so
I don't know if there's something wrong with that.
No, so I'll give the board the same advice that I gave you this second iteration.
Yep, yep.
If you make a major modification to the local law, you have to start the process over.
So be it. That's what, if a majority of the board up here wants to go with 50% of what they said, I really wanna say more, let's just 50%, that has to be done. Those are gonna be major changes, so we start from square one again. Okay, go ahead.
Question. So I'm good with keeping it open. It kind of changes meeting to meeting. But that's okay, that's fine, for a couple different reasons. If we're just gonna change, which I think was brought up tonight, pro or con, the density portion, would that be considered, depending on what the number is, let's just say 850, 800, 750, would that, is that your definition of major change?
It must be, because it was
I'm asking
1250
the
last
attorney,
time.
please,
Yeah.
please.
Well,
we
we
don't
went
start
from
all over.
1250 to 0, that's a
Correct.
major change.
Correct.
0 is 0.
Yeah,
There's, you can't even really calculate
I get it.
how many units you might get.
Yep.
Okay. If you go to say 850, or even if you went to 1250, that's already been circulated once to the county. I will caution though, the county has nothing to do with seeker,
Correct.
as Mr. Generone pointed out. Seeker is this board, the planning board on a project, okay? All the county says is, you do what you want here, but it doesn't have, it either does or does not have a regional impact. So, if you come up with 1250, 850, it's less of an impact than 0. How much less of an impact, I don't know. But I think that to do it correctly and to insulate the board from perhaps challenges, which as an attorney I'm also always concerned about, I think you would start the process over.
Right, so
I just do.
that's what I was getting at, because I think
Even if it's just the density, if everything else stays
at this
the same.
point now, as I stated a couple meetings ago, when it was said by a board member that there were 1 or 2 holdouts at 1250, and we finally came around to 0, we were getting accolades for that. Understanding that the public, as the mayor said, the folks who have come up to the podium have not changed. And we've taken all their concerns, I think, under consideration, which is why we put a handful of fail-safes in the law in regards to parking and apartment size and mixed use. And that's why we put a lot of that stuff in there, okay? So not the first time that this zoning law, it's the first time here, but not necessarily the first time in Orange County that the law is that number, 0 or less, or a little lower than what we had before, or lower than what we had before. So, you know, I'm just worried that I have no problem extending it to the next meeting. I have no problem extending it till after the election, because there are comments being made that worry me, not so much about folks who aren't running, which I appreciate when they come up, or they're just residents, but there's a little miscommunication or a little misinformation, which kind of worries me too during this whole process. And so I think we should just start the whole thing over again, from scratch, and that's the bottom line. By me saying motion to close the public hearing tonight, that was gonna be, the next thing I said was, forget about voting on this thing, because this is just, in my opinion, at this point, if we're gonna modify it again, there are so many different areas where this could be challenged. Forget about it. And so that's where I'm at. And I think that's probably the best wise decision we can make, is just start the process over again.
So if you want to do that, you can certainly close the public hearing with the understanding that you're going to table seeker and the vote.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
begin from scratch.
I need a motion.
A motion to close the public hearing?
No, to have in the minutes the way we're gonna go with it.
Okay, so you wouldn't need a motion for that, you would just, if that's what So if you take a straw vote on what the board wants to do, and the board generally wants to close this public hearing because you're gonna change the local law and start over again, then you would table the two items that are associated with.
Correct.
But that's up to the board.
I think that's the way the majority, if not the whole board wants to go.
And with my comment, I feel bad, because there are some folks, I think, that come meeting in and out, that are waiting for this to get passed for certain reasons, and all I'm hearing from, you know, the board is, one meeting it's in favor of moving forward, the next meeting now we're, you know, playing a little game, so that's fine, I'm good with it, let's start over again, yeah.
Well,
So, if
let
you
me
need something official,
clarify.
I can
This
do
is
that.
not playing a game when most of the
It
people who
is.
show up at the public hearing, and the public hearing is for us to listen to. So we're the ones who actually said, we wanna listen what you have to say, and if the people are for it, they should show up. That's what I'm saying, they should show up. But the people who are showing up are the ones who are against it. So it's not a game. Okay, the people who are showing up are the ones who are against it. And we should listen to them if they're the ones who are actually here, who care enough to actually speak
think
up.
we did
So to me, that is just respectful of what the public wants.
Not every person that got up to the
But you
podium was
seem-
against it.
You seem to just,
No, not every person that got up to the podium was against it.
no,
So,
I didn't say that, I said most.
We're taking
Yes,
into
you
what
see,
they
you
said.
did. I
What do
said
you
most
need?
of the
Starting
people
over
who showed
again.
up.
What do you need us to
Don't
This is
do?
the problem
twist
is-
my words around,
What do we
Jen.
need to do?
You're
You
just-
do it on your own, there,
You're
dear.
twisting it around.
We
Just
need
to
to
remind
get
the public that I did vote no to actually
Yes,
move
you
this
did.
forward, and I was the only one up here that voted no on it, because I was not
And
comfortable with
trustee
the
Guerrero
wording.
voted every time to make the changes that we are there now.
And just to remind people, I am still for the law, but most of you are here tonight, don't seem to be saying what I'm for. So leave it open or table the entire voting on the law until after the election. That's fine too.
Leave it open.
It's up to the board. I can only advise you what happens if you do this, or what happens if you do that, or what happens.
Look, the easiest thing is just to leave everything open and just move it down the line.
Okay.
So we'll just leave, I think leave it open.
Okay, so just don't close the public hearing then.
I guess my only other question would be, if we did close the public hearing tonight, and it got voted down, we just start from scratch anyway, correct? If we were.
Well, if you close the public hearing and you take a vote, I mean, I don't think that's what I'm hearing that the board intends to do.
No, I'm saying, in this scenario, if we close the public hearing, and it got voted down, just saying, right?
You mean if people voted no on the?
If we voted no, then we just start from scratch again anyway, correct? If we
Well,
so choose.
yes, you wouldn't have adopted the local law.
Right.
And you you'd probably vote no on the seeker.
Why would we vote on something we need to change?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the question. It's,
Okay.
yeah.
Just two different ways to do it.
Well,
Heidi, you okay with the minutes?
yes, sir.
Alicia, you okay? Can I move on?
Yeah, you're just leaving the public hearing open.
Yeah?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Comment on agenda items. Excuse me, give me a second.
Yeah, stop.
So there's four of us, I'm not gonna be that one. There's four people, what I'm hearing, agreed to this local law.
Yes, I agree to it,
I'm not just saying you're one,
yes,
so there's four altogether.
yes. But you kept the public hearing open as if you wanted to hear what the people has to say, and now they said it, most of them said, don't do it, and now you're saying,
Okay.
no, we're already gonna vote yes anyway.
Okay,
That is wrong.
No, we never said that.
I didn't say
That's wrong.
that.
I never said that.
Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
Michael Joyce, member of the Village of Highland Falls. Ladies, you're looking lovely. You gentlemen are also looking lovely.
Thank you.
The last time I said something, you felt left there. I don't want you to feel
No,
left out.
Mr. Joyce, I didn't feel left out.
Anyway,
I thought it was weird, but it's okay.
thought it was weird, but it gets
Mike,
more
Mike,
complicated.
Mike, what item?
Oh,
Mike, what?
oh, so, it's about budget item. And I wanna feel safe in my community. And I know there's a couple of meetings and workshops and we couldn't talk, so I couldn't ask it, so this is why it's kinda stretched
Go
out.
ahead, go ahead.
So, did we ever find out what happened to that 500 pounds of meat? I mean, who took it? What went down with it?
Well, I'll say
Because,
this to
no,
you.
no, if I can finish, please, my point is, the biggest budget item for any village, county, country is protection, defense. And I'd just like to know what's going on. If you say it's an ongoing investigation, you can't talk, well, you know, the case is kind of being so old that the meat got so rancid, it could nearly head to the border itself. So is there any way, is there any news on what happened?
I know what happened. But I don't know that I can say it here in public, so I'm not going.
Well,
I'll talk to the police chief.
well,
Wait a minute, you wanna speak?
No, you were staring at me, so I
Well,
was
because you're
staring
back there
back.
laughing, like, you know,
I
what's
did,
what's to
I
laugh
did
about?
giggle, because
Somebody
you always
stole
say you know.
food from the food pantry.
Yeah, and you
where
should
poor
tell us as a
people-
mayor.
Where poor people go.
And you should
I
tell
don't
us
think
as a
there's
mayor,
anything
but
to
only
laugh
you should
about.
know.
But
Well,
that's
they're
only you
laughing
should
because
know.
you're
Go
not
ahead.
giving them
So
an
Mike,
answer.
Mike.
That's why you're
Transparency, you should tell
You're not
I'll talk
giving
to
them
the
an
chief
answer.
and
That's
see
why.
what can be said.
You just said you know,
I have
but you
read-
don't wanna
I have
tell
read
them.
the report.
That's
I know who they
laughable.
are. Are you kidding me?
Yes.
I know who
If
they-
you know the answer, tell them.
Mike, am I answering your questions? Best I
not,
can.
not,
No, okay.
not really.
Well, you want facts, I don't know that I can do that. I read the reports, I know who they've interviewed. Some people are in this room. Some people are in this room.
Mayor?
That's as far as I'm going.
Did
Okay.
anybody?
It's an ongoing
You can say
investigation.
this, this is a yes or no, and it's not giving nothing away. Did anybody get arrested or charged for this?
Nope. No?
No? And was it true that the cameras were not working?
In the church?
Yeah.
Or outside.
Or
You're not
outside?
gonna get an answer, Mike.
Because that would sound very convenient. I mean,
Yeah.
500
there's a lot-
500 pounds of meat, I couldn't take that out under my arm, you know? what I
Right,
mean?
there's a lot you'd be shocked
You
that
need a
goes into
truck.
this story. With the people involved, you'd be surprised.
Okay,
Thank
so,
Thank you.
I just wanna bring it up.
Because that's not on the agenda, the meeting.
Well, it's finance, it's budget. The next meeting, I'm gonna bring it up to look for an answer. Thank you.
I have one thing, Mr. Dunn, I don't know if he has this on his list, but I hope you will consider, Mr. Dunn brought this up, the height restriction on the senior multifamily development in the B1 zone is 70 feet. And Mr. Dunn reminded us about that, and we keep missing it. So maybe this can be folded into this decision that we should go with the 48 feet, change that 70-foot mark.
Oh, it's 48, it's 48.
It's, right now it allows for 70 feet, but
For
it
senior.
should be
Yeah,
40,
proceed.
48.
Okay, right. Okay. May I have approval to pay bill?
Can we close the comment?
No.
I'm not trying to be.
Yes, you are.
Why do we not interrupt while we're trying to? I'm not trying to be that person, but several times over many meetings, people were yelled at for even just doing this. To try, because I feel bad with my back to the public during the public comment. And I've done it several times, and I've been admonished by the board. So to take this over and have zero, not even a look, or, you know what, you're right. Let's face the people, because it's more polite. and I agree, I think it should be over here. But I'm not gonna let bullies and corrupt people just make me lay down. Someone has to say something, because nobody said anything. That's why I said it. I was not trying to stop the comments, that's a fact. The only fact is, if, depending on who you are, you get special treatment at a meeting.
Not this meeting.
If you don't hate me, I'm gonna have my back to you. One of the problems I see, and it kind of is on the agenda, the fact that we have a camera with no mics, when we paid a lot of money for a sound system, I guarantee half the people that spoke are not gonna be picked up when they're facing this way.
Right.
And when half of them speak at this level, which is their normal level. That is upsetting to me with the money that was spent on another sound system on top of the sound system at the Village Hall that we already have, which at the Village Hall, most of the time, you are standing at an angle, somewhat facing the people. So I'm wondering why we're continuously spending this money and again, and not using the equipment. My agenda item is on the taxes, on the fact that I just want to make sure the public is aware that, once again, we're going over the tax levy. There will not be a check in the mail. And it would be nice to know why. Not just, we have a lot of items. Was there an extra effort to get under the tax levy that a lot of the other communities have accomplished? And this is another year on top of another year, on top of another year, that we're continuously over the tax levy. That's my point.
I'm gonna be a village resident, I just wanna follow up on that, that was my question as well. You're gonna again, be voting to go over the tax cap, which the tax cap is already an increase. So we're going to go above the allotted increase on our taxes again. I hope the village board that you know that we cannot afford this. Not the village as an entity, we the villagers cannot afford this. People complain that rents are too high. Correlate the fact that we are raising our taxes every chance we get. Not to the cap, above the cap, again. This is really, you're putting too much pressure on all of us out here.
Anyone else? Okay. So, next is to approve bills and claims in the amount, for fiscal year 2024, 2025, $329,000 May I have a motion to pay bills?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have roll call?
Trustee Guerrero?
No.
Trustee Ramus?
Yay.
Trustee Carroll?
Yes.
Trustee DeSalvo?
Yes.
And Mayor D'Onofrio.
Before I vote, I want to say that I thank the village board members, Mr. Ramus, DeSalvo, and Pete Carroll. An hour before this meeting started, they were down the village hall going over all the bills one by one. My vote is yes, motion carries, thank you. Okay, now, the minutes you have before you, the meeting was on the 18th of December, 2024. May I have approval for the minutes?
Motion. Approved minutes is written.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item, we already did about zoning. The next item about zoning,
You're tabling both of
tabling,
those, correct?
right, yeah. Okay. Introduction to local law number 2, 2025, to authorize a property tax levy in excess of the limit established by General Municipal Law 3-C, and a resolution setting a public hearing for the local law. May I I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee DeSalvo, is there a second?
Second.
Second by
Discussion.
trustee.
Yeah, discussion.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Amos, you wanna go first?
No,
You don't?
I think you can explain exactly what's transpiring, why we do this.
Sure, just so the folks know in the room, even the folks who are running for office, this is the time that the state requires us to set a public hearing should we need to go over the tax cap. It is not proposed at this time that we go over the tax cap, but I have to set the date for a public hearing. So the folks who are running for office, when they come up, make sure you have that information. But it says here right on the agenda, public hearing. It's not a vote. We're not voting on raising the taxes over the tax cap tonight. We're just setting the public hearing to discuss the potential and possibility. I don't set the timeline, the state of New York does. We don't set the timeline, the state of New York does. And just a little historical information, last year was the first year that we went over the tax cap, and I think all the years that I've been on the board. I'm sure I'll be corrected, but I'm almost certain that last year was the first year that we went over the tax cap, at least for a minimum of a decade that I've been on the board. Just want the board to understand that.
Okay, I want to say this. We haven't even had a budget workshop yet, so how would we know what the tax rate's going to be? Number two, is to pick off what Mr. DeSalvo just said, and I'm very proud of this. We have never, you can like me or dislike me, it's fine. I'm so far past that, it's not even funny. The fact of the matter is, we've never gone over the 2% tax cap until last year, and that had to do with the storm. And you go in front, excuse me, you can disagree with me, as soon as I get that.
Yes.
You, try to find another community this size, be comparable, that stayed with under the 2% tax cap like we have. The town hasn't. I'm not picking out the town. I understand what they're up against. But the town didn't. I don't know if you guys were down at town board meetings saying the same thing you just said here. You pay town tax, you should. So, Melanie,
Yes.
disagree.
Okay, I'm ready. Okay, so the fact of the matter is, this board has raised taxes on you year after year after year. Whether it's zero or below the tax cap, they have raised taxes on you year after year after year.
I 100% agree
And
with
taxes
that.
in New York is #1 in the entire country. So going up on your taxes year after year after year with nothing to show for it is a big deal.
Well-
And that is the fact of the matter. Number two, we've heard Mr. DeSalvo say this last year. This is just a resolution for a public hearing. It doesn't mean we're gonna go over the tax cap. You heard that last year.
Yeah.
So, there you go. He's saying it again. Oh, it's just a resolution for a public hearing. It doesn't mean we're gonna go up. It will, okay? And it will go above the tax cap. And this is what I will say. My vote is no.
Good,
My vote is no, because what we need to do is cut spending.
right.
And I've told you many, many ways of how we can cut spending and manage your money more efficiently. But they don't want to listen, so your taxes will go up again.
I think the board has only heard of really one
So
way.
no.
I think the board is, no, I got to comment on that.
Oh, okay.
So the honest answer is, I don't know yet because we have not started the budget process. So that is my honest answer. I hope the hell we don't have to go that route. But we didn't raise taxes last year as much in comparison pound for pound that the town was able to, or that they did. Again, not a criticism, that's just the approach they took. So we can have the budget argument all you want, and I'm sure we're gonna. But don't sit there and laugh, it's
I'm
very
gonna ask
remarkable.
more facts to
You're not
tell
even a
you.
property owner, you're not even a primary property owner in the Village of Island
Yes, I
Falls, so
am.
you don't even have to worry about paying the
Yes, I
taxes.
am. So don't lie.
Okay,
to
so
the
at this
public
time, I'll call the
permission
question
for
on the
anyone,
motion.
and that's defamatory. I'm gonna
Please
get-
have the
Are you
vote.
counting,
So
are you
I
counting
will
H.
tell
Snyder
you-
Avenue?
No,
Are you counting that? Can you sell
my
that to the
primary
AOG?
residence is
You know you guys
You
are
haven't
personally
sold that to
attacking her
You
and your
are.
lawyers
I
just sit
have
there?
peace with them.
Aren't you
So-
supposed to?
Yes,
Oh,
I
shut
do.
Let's just have the vote on
Yeah,
it.
you
Call the
know.
question.
Aren't you their lawyer? Shouldn't you tell them to stop like you did
Melanie
last
just
time?
told us
But they're
that she
attacking
owns
the lady you don't like.
427 Main
Oh, by the way.
Street, Vasili's building.
That's right.
AOG owns
I
it.
do. Yes, I
Okay.
read from it.
Oh my God.
So let me tell you a fact.
Can we call-
You're right, we haven't even had the budget hearings. But I have that year-to-date, current year-to-date expenses and revenues accounting from the treasurer. You know what your deficits are? The sewer has a deficit of $500,000, a negative balance of $502,588. The water has a negative balance of $747,538. The capital reserve fund has a negative balance of $3,451,823.49. So do you think your taxes are not gonna go up and above the tax cap when all of these funds? Year to date, we're not even done with the year. We're only halfway done with the year. And these are your balances.
Okay,
And by the way, FEMA has stopped reimbursing the village since May of 2024 because they're seeing irregularities in the claims and invoices that they keep approving. They have not reimbursed. And they have not even met with the board because of these irregularities. Have they told you any of that? No. There's no transparency here. Just like tonight, I didn't even know that all these facts were coming out. They won't tell me.
You have to
And
spend
they're
more-
not telling you
You have
either.
to spend more than 2 days in
If
Village
they're not
Hall,
telling you,
an hour each
they're not
time.
telling you.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
I have to comment on her. Okay, I
Just
have
campaign.
to. Feel free to
word.
come into Village Hall, call me anytime, here's the balances in the accounts.
I don't need to.
Okay, yeah, I don't need to see
No,
that,
go
it
ahead,
doesn't
read it.
exist.
I know the bank
I don't
accounts-
need to know
the
that
bank
stuff, it's only
accounts are
true.
not the
I
same
know.
as the
Sewer,
year-to-date statement.
sewer, she says we have a negative 500,000, we have a positive 413,000. Water, we had a negative what, 10 million? Okay, we have a positive 472,000. In general fund, we have a positive balance of 1.7 million. In capital reserve account, which you just said was negative 3 million, is positive 2.7 million, 2 million, almost 2.8 million. And in reserve accounts, $860,000. So I don't know where you get these numbers from.
You know where I
It's
get these
okay.
numbers
It's
from.
fine. I don't know if you
Because
just
I'm
can't
the
read it.
treasurer.
You can't
Okay,
read the
let me
sheets.
explain
You
this
can't read the
because this
sheets.
is
It's
again,
okay.
half of the information that they're giving you. What
It's
is
not
in the
half, it's
bank?
right here.
What is
It's right
in the
here.
bank is not the same as what is in the balance sheet.
Yeah,
And
okay.
that is because
Right.
there are
So what's
bills
operations?
outstanding.
What's operations?
So bills outstanding
She won't answer.
has not been, not everything has been paid. So what's in the bank
All right, I'm
account
moving
is
on. I
not
have a
going
motion, do I have a second?
Yes.
correlate
Do I have a
with the
second on
bank
the
Yes, you do.
statement.
Trustee Carroll seconded.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed?
Opposed.
No. Okay, next we have, you guys are gonna get a break. We have executive session.
So moved.
Motion to go into executive session, trustee DeSalvo, is there a second? Pete Carroll. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, there's nothing to say about-
Now that the village has gone into executive session, I figured this would be a good time to get up and to inform the public that there are burglaries going on in New Windsor. And there's videos of it on an app called Nextdoor. And I have on my home video, my security system at home, the same van and black car that has doing burglaries in New Windsor went through Pelwood Lake last week. So I want the village to know, and Fort Montgomery to know, to look out for a silver van and a small black car. They travel together and they run around and break into people's houses. They are very organized. They stay in the house just for a minute or two and they run out with the bags. There's video of it online. I have my video, which I'm getting ready to show to the police right now. Silver van, I think it's a Dodge, or a Chrysler. It's silver, minivan, it's not an SUV, and a small black car. Thank you. Be safe out there, and watch out for one another.
Maybe you need a motion to come back into.
So moved.
Oh, what'd you guys vote on?
Vote on anything.
Oh, come on, we hear you. Come on, you can't sneak it past.
Okay, folks. Thank you.
Did you participate in this executive?
Yes.
We did, yeah.
Yes.
One of the 8,000.
Sharon? All right, I'm gonna move on. Resolution, you have in your packet. Should approve the memorandum of agreement between the Village of Highland Falls and the Highland Falls
Okay, good.
PPA. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee DeSalvo, is there a second?
Yes, second.
Trustee Carroll, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Roll call.
Trustee Guerrero.
No.
Trustee Reyes.
Yay.
Trustee Carroll.
Yes.
Trustee DeSalvo.
Yes.
Mayor Denocchio.
Yes, motion carries, thank you. Next is, approve and endorse an application for a grant under the Greenway Conservancy Trail Grant Program for the Highland Falls Preserve Project. The Highland Falls Preserve Project is the, trail down behind My Town Marketplace with vistas that are spectacular. So, this is, approving, the village endorsing the grant, correct? Pardon? To apply for the grant. May I have a motion?
So moved.
May I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Next is authorizing the mayor to sign an owner's endorsement for Scenic Hudson project for site plan approval. This is for you to go to the planning board, correct? And that's what it is. We're gonna end up owning a couple little pieces for 2 or 3 cars to park. And that's what this is. That's, yeah, just shows that we're a small part owner in the area. Okay. May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carried. Authorize the mayor to sign Edmunds training proposal for Village Hall. They do our payroll, HR, et cetera, right Heidi?
Yes,
And we have them on board now.
we do. We do. We have access to all of the modules, but we need the training to use them efficiently.
I make a motion to approve the Edmonds training for the village hall staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Next is a resolution for a budget transfer. Whereas on January 21, 2025, village board meeting, the village board approved a budget transfer from the general fund to workman's comp. Now therefore be it resolved that the following budget transfer be approved. $1,582.91 from the 601607927 general fund. The same amount to go into workman's comp 986245065. May I have a motion?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Trustee DeSalvo, trustee Carroll, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. This is a letter from Eric Smith, he's the chair of the Zone Consolidated Planning Board, recommending that Harvey Green, who's on the board, whose term expired, would like to remain.
I'll make a motion, we take the recommendation of the planning board chair.
How many years is it for? That's what I'm looking for.
So, just a quick
I think
background.
it's 5.
Mr. Green was on the village planning board before they were consolidated. Worked with me for, I believe it was 7 or 8 years at the village level, and now has been an integral part on the town consolidated planning board, so I would second that motion.
You have it, Heidi? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The fire department has their annual elections, and the Howell Falls Fire Department elected Eric Smith to remain as chief, and the assistant chief remained Stephen Suarez. I know it's two different items there, but we approve Eric Smith as chief, Steve Suarez as assistant chief.
So
And, yeah, motion by Jim Sabo, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Pete, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'd like the board to consider and to find in favor. Ivan's over here, and he likes to go by Chris, full-time, been part-time, full-time account clerk at an hourly rate of $20 an hour and a maximum probation per recommendation of the village clerk, Ivy Johnson. Can we approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Seconded by Pete, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Just a quick question, what is the maximum probation, please?
52 weeks.
52, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Motion carries, thank you, welcome. Ivan, welcome.
Thank you.
Keep
I
it,
appreciate
you
it.
don't talk to him.
Thank you.
He might charge us.
Yeah, if he opens his mouth, he's charging us. It's an attorney.
I'm on the clock.
No, not you we're worried about.
Oh, they're worried about it.
Okay, I would like the board to approve the following as surplus vehicles. Let's see what we have here. Per Jason Torpy, the chief, and DPW Superintendent John Jones. We have a police car 931, high mileage, many hours of use, no longer safe, yada yada. DPW 2012 Ford F-350 truck. VIN number is there. DPW 2007 Chevy pickup truck. VIN number is on your paperwork. If we could approve those two vehicles, 2 trucks and 1 car.
I'll make a motion to put those up for the recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. Looking for approval for a request for training, village clerk Heidi Johnson and deputy clerk Lucinda Brown to attend Board of Elections workshop at Orange County Board of Elections, 75 Webster Avenue, on Tuesday, the 4th of February, 2025, at 10 a.m. Reimbursement for mileage per employee travel expense guidelines.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Pete, all in favor?
Yes.
Yay.
Opposed? Motion carried. Can I bypass the board comments?
No, I have something to say. Okay. Just a couple of things, I know it's already late, so I only have 2 things. About the local law, we were here for a couple of hours. Most of the people who showed up were against it. I want to say I am for it, and there are a lot of constraints in this law that keep you from having the density that people who are speaking here tonight are afraid of. But I voted to keep the public hearing open. It's not about dragging it out. I'm not trying to drag it out, but it's about showing the public that we're listening to you. So people, if you are for the zoning change, please show up at the public hearing. Otherwise, it appears that nobody's for it other than the people who are showing up at the public hearing. So if the people by majority who show up at the public hearing don't want it, then it's not going to pass. It's not about what I want, it's not about what this board wants. We work for you, so show up at the public hearings, please, if you're for it. And number two, I want to clarify, because Mr. DeSalvo, as the budget officer, as the money man for many years, doesn't seem to understand what the money is about and gives you only half of the information. So he gave you numbers about our bank accounts. We have 12 bank accounts. Okay? And in those bank accounts, there is cash, there's money in there. So I want to clarify about the numbers. I have the statements, so does he, about the year-to-date annual revenues and expenditures. And the numbers that I gave you show that the expenditures exceed the revenues, and we're only halfway through the year. So, if you want to think about it this way, about the bank balance that he told you, the amount that's sitting in the bank right now isn't the same as the actual balance we have to work with. That's because there are outstanding bills and outstanding obligations that we haven't been paid. So these amounts still need to be deducted. So this is how you should think of it. It's like checking your bank account on payday. You see a high number, you see a big number on your bank account, but you haven't paid your rent, okay? And you haven't paid your bills. So what's in the bank account that you're looking at today is not the same as what's in your revenues and expenditures statement. That's how you look at it. And that's the simple way of explaining it, other than this roundabout explanation he tries to tell us.
Yeah, so I got a couple things.
Oh, yeah, well, huh? I'll go back to it.
I don't know.
Okay, all right, I'll go away after, just let him go and then I'll do it.
Okay, so just real quick, in December, down at the wastewater treatment plant, the daily flow is 732,000 gallons a day. It's a lot. TAM continues to take out sludge from the thickener, but we're working on getting that. There's a project down there that we're working on, so that can stop. And it has to do with some of the pumps. Pumps are watered, and again, they're working on that. They started heating on the primary digester, which is a good thing. Also, rebuilding of some of the valves in the east primary clarifier. Also, they checked and put in some new heat lamps that are going to help on the clarifier chains and the sprocket drive area. There's some other general maintenance that they've been doing down there, just like our crew used to do in the past. I was down there yesterday for a few hours. Try to get down there every week for a few hours, just to see how the guys are doing, and the plant's operating well at this point in time. There's a couple of other things that I'm looking at some smart water technology for the village. This will help with some of the infrastructure that we got problems with out there, and cybersecurity on our water system. We need it. Everybody knows how vulnerable water systems are at this point in time, and I don't want to go down that road. Also, I was at the town chamber, and I think one of the things that everybody really needs to know about is there's a donate blood drive, and that's going to be January 27th through the 30th at Ike Hall. And this is, anybody can go donate, but it's for military soldiers. So anybody who wants to go, Chris is supposed to zoom in on. Anybody else wants to go, this is also on the town's chamber website as well. A great way to give back to those who give all for us. I also, they had a lot of things going on at that meeting. It was very educational, for sure. And anybody that wants to get involved, go on their website. Anybody can go to their meetings. You don't have to be a member of the chamber to be there, but it's a way to get involved. Real quick on the zoning, and I said it at the last meeting, and I'll say it again. the zero density is a problem. If you look at all of our other zoning districts, it goes anywhere from 2,500 to 40,000 square feet per unit. That's in our code now. So, you know, to go to zero is not the way to do this. It's not smart growth. Smart growth would be this. Look, everybody came to meetings a long time ago and they talked about shades and they talked about the park. What you didn't hear tonight was they also own 2 other buildings there. And I was told that it's approximately a half an acre of land, which is a little over 21,000 square feet. So, 21,000 square feet of land area. If they had 1,000 square feet of density, they could get 21 units there if they tore those buildings down. That's what they're looking for, 21. Why we need to go to 850, I don't know. But 1,000, I wanted 1,250. 1,000, look, I can compromise. 1,000 would cover what they want. It would give them what they want. So that's all I got for now on that. But if anybody really wants to go over it, I can talk for hours on zoning. Thank you.
I wanna do public comment, I skipped over that. Anyone have anything else talked out? No? All right, okay.
Alina Olivia, village resident. Just a couple things on snow.
Snow?
Yeah, on snow that comes out of the sky. Y'all,
I know.
y'all send out.
I didn't hear you, I didn't know if I heard you.
All good. Y'all send out through the village alert system the text, please reminder, there's no parking on village streets during snowfall. Vehicles are subject to being ticketed and or towed. How many vehicles were towed this last storm?
I have to get that from the police.
Okay. How many tickets were issued this last storm?
I didn't come with that.
Because we know there's a lot of violators out there for not moving
I saw
off
them
the
on my
street for
street.
snow, right?
Yeah, saw them online.
I saw a couple tickets on doors as I was driving around. And I'm just wondering, the tickets for snow violation, are those in the same category as the tickets for the parking violations, as you had said in the last meeting or before, that we have no way of actually enforcing those tickets to being paid because we're not linked up with the DMV? So is that the same situation or no?
I want to say actually yes, because we don't have a scofflaw program, but I would confirm it.
Okay, so just thinking as I was driving by, seeing tickets, that it was probably not really a great use of our time if we can't enforce them. That if you're gonna put out to the residents that you're gonna be towed if you're still on the street, I don't think you would have to tow very many cars for people to actually stop parking on the street during snowstorms. And one more thing on snow, can somebody please inform the plow crew that you can control how much salt is delivered from the, by the conveyor chain on the machine, and you can also control the speed of the spinner in the chute. So that means that you can control how much and how far your salt is going. The crews are running at full blast at all times. You are throwing salt down driveways, up to doorsteps. I mean, anybody maybe in the audience see how much salt has been laid out on the roads this season? My plants are getting absolutely pummeled by salt. It's not good for the environment. Some of my shrubs I've been nursing since they were babies, 12, 15 years now, and they're really taking a beating this season. So can we please rein in the salt from the plow trucks? Okay, and I just gotta ask, is there any resolve or any action on the garbage cans?
Commissioner?
Yeah,
Any?
I went to the chief, what's it?
Mr. Trustee Guerrero's lazy.
Aren't you the commissioner?
No, we asked
Yeah, we asked you.
the help of the police to actually.
Yeah,
Commissioner.
I had a whole list.
Enforce the code.
If you come, I'll leave, I'm gonna rewrite, I'm gonna write on another piece of paper. You come in Village Hall anytime this week, we'll give it to the girls, they'll give it to you. It's a process. It's such a process, it's ridiculous. It's 14 days, then you have to reissue the ticket. It's like, I'm not even kidding, it's like 2 months down the road before a ticket comes. That's terrible.
So maybe in 2 months it'll be better.
So is there not anything else that can be done
Well,
to
that's what we have to see.
alleviate that process? Because,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like fundamentals, you know,
Yeah, the fu-
garbage and snow and.
I'm one voice, I agree, this can be
The
changed.
fundamental part of it is
It
that we
doesn't have to be
pay
2 weeks.
for a consolidated service that we're not getting.
Okay.
The town, the village in its infinite wisdom, as some folks who are running for office now want to get rid of the village, want to consolidate with the town. It's a consolidated service, and if I send my police officer, or if I send my DPW, or if I send a village clerk to go issue a ticket, I'm not paying twice as a village resident. To me, that's silly. And the police department already assists the billing department with issuing summonses and tickets for people who have roosters we can't get rid of. So, to me personally, as a taxpayer, as a board member, to have a police officer go around and write tickets for trash cans, if we had a multitude of folks on during a shift, I would say absolutely to keep busy. The fact of the matter is I have 1 to 2 people on a shift. And already I've gotten different surrounding communities having issues with burglaries. New Windsor, town of Woodbury. To me, that's more of a priority. Again, I implore the town, I implore them every year that they look at their budget. Hire a part-time code enforcement officer, because we probably need just the code enforcement more than we need the building, if anything. Doesn't happen. I can't control the town board, I can't.
Phil does a great job.
And that's not taking away from anything, not to
Phil does a great job,
what
but he doesn't
Mr.
have time.
Hannibal does, he does a great
He's only
job.
one person. I
He's
get it, I
underwater,
understand.
he's
We have
underwater.
half of the town
Well, you
to
said we
hire
only
a
have 2
part-time.
officers on duty at a time. That's
Sometimes we have
difficult.
1, 2,
I mean,
yes.
we only have like 15 officers though, like full-time?
No, we do not have 15 full-time officers. We do
Okay,
not.
how many?
I believe we have 9 total, including the chief. They're not all on at one time.
I'll talk to the chief and the attorney to see if we can shorten up the process of trash cans left out.
Isn't it
What
the
do you-
same
I'm
village
telling you.
ordinance as spitting on the sidewalk?
Huh?
Isn't it a village ordinance the same as spitting on a sidewalk?
I don't think so, no.
I've been giving a summons, a village
I
ordinance
understand
for
that.
spitting on the
I
sidewalk.
think spitting on the
So
sidewalk
someone
is
cannot
different
get a
than it can be.
village
Okay,
ordinance
thank you.
for blocking
Thank
the
you.
sidewalk, which your children have to walk down.
I'm trying to answer
Do
your
you have
question.
anything?
That doesn't make sense. I think there's a disconnect, or not true.
Clearly.
Yeah, not truth or transparency from you.
I have a bunch of
I love Pico.
Who's responsible for cleaning the sidewalks on Main Street?
Well, the answer is the
Don't
property
choke.
owner.
It's only a question, don't choke.
I apologize.
Medic?
The property owner.
The property owner.
But we will do them because it's Main Street for the
Okay.
shoppers.
Because there are old people in this community,
I know.
and if you looked at the sidewalks,
Mike, you don't have to, I do, I actually do. Today, I had to walk out in the road, because I'm one of those old people, and then I had it in front of Dyeroff's drugstore. There's ice, it's complete ice, the width and the length.
yes.
And I had to go out to the road to go to Andy's. So I got it, I see it. Thank you.
Next point. Your 9 full-time police officers, are they getting paid whether they're on or off duty?
What do you mean if
A
they're off?
full-time,
Salary.
salary.
Salary, yeah.
They're getting
They go
salary.
home. Yeah.
So what's the issue about writing tickets?
I don't know, Mike.
If they're on salary, what's the issue? They don't work
They shouldn't
24
be
hours.
writing tickets.
Community policing. It should be
All right.
community.
I mean,
thank you.
Small community.
I don't like that.
You like this stir.
No. I was in the Army,
I know,
we did 24 hours.
yes.
KP.
We did.
As far as the garbage cans, I was under the impression that we were working with the town board. You guys right now make it sound like you have no power which I 100% disagree.
Correct.
If you had a better relationship with the town board, you can go there and you can talk about things, and you may not get everything you want, but you could voice the villagers' concerns. And the villagers, which people don't understand, are 2/3 of the town. We pay town taxes, and we occupy 2/3. We vote for the town board. So whatever the villagers want, the villagers could get if we go out in number. And we're hoping that the people that we pay to represent us will also represent us with the town on consolidated groups. And several people on this board voted for those consolidated groups, and now they are saying, what a horrible thing, and I disagree. And no one, and I would also appreciate the condescension to stop and the antagonism to stop for those running for office, the comments made by the board when there's people running for office that have never been in office and are trying to get educated, and yet you want to pound them down and say, well, you guys should know. First of all, they're asking a question not necessarily for you, but for the